For more on this, let us now go to New York and talk to Jim Kavanagh, political analyst and blogger. Very good to have you on the program, Jim. What do you think about the significance of this report? 13 libraries annihilated.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. Scholasticide is a good word. It joins with politicide, the destruction of the entire polity, really. Ethnocide, which is what the Israelis are doing. I mean, they've destroyed Palestinian life and culture. 90% of the schools, all of the universities, almost all of the hospitals. As you say, killing destroying the civic repository, killing doctors and professors and teachers in their homes with their families. It really is, it's just part of the Israeli Zionist project of ethnic cleansing and of expelling or eliminating the Palestinians. And they're still, they have paused. It's a good thing that this has been paused and that hundreds of thousands of Gazans are able to go back to northern Gaza, but there's nothing there. And they need, I was just watching your previous segment talking about the aid trucks not getting in, not enough of the aid trucks, no hospital supplies. So I don't think, unfortunately, that this is over. I think it's going to start up again. They've transferred for now their immediate energy to the West Bank, where they are creating the same conditions in the West Bank. Even in southern Lebanon, they're blowing up homes. So we have to realize, I'm afraid, that there's a pause of what's going on in Gaza now, but Gaza has to be rebuilt, and it has to be rebuilt in a way that's secure and not going to be blown up again by the Israelis. And I'm afraid that it's more likely that this ceasefire is going to collapse at some point once the Israelis get enough hostages home, and they're going to start again. I'm just very worried about it, and I'm as I've been consistently, not very hopeful about what the long-term prospects are.
Right, Jim, we had a report earlier that it's going to take at least 12 years to just remove the rubble, the debris from the city, and let alone the infrastructure and rebuilding the town. How long do you think this is going to take for the city to become actually livable for the people?
Well, that's a kind of a minimum estimate of how much time it will take to clear things out. And the question is, will the city and will Gaza, the territory of Gaza, be secure from Israeli attack? Will the Israelis ever allow Gaza to be rebuilt? I don't think this time they blew up the whole place in order to allow it to be rebuilt. I think they blew up the whole place in order to make it completely unlivable and to create this situation where the so-called voluntary emigration, which is really expulsion, into countries like, not just, but into countries like Egypt and Jordan, and around the world. I think Trump is going to end up putting a lot of pressure on countries. Watch what he's doing with countries. He's threatening them with tariffs, and they already tried this. Blinken tried it, to bribe Egypt and Jordan with canceling their foreign debt. I suspect this is what's going to come back. I don't know how you can do it. I mean, the international organizations have already rebuilt Gaza, rebuilt portions of Gaza. How many times, only to have the Israelis blow it up again? And this time, countries in the world are not going to want, populations in countries are not going to want to spend money rebuilding Gaza to have it blown up again. There has to be a secure, long-term situation, which unfortunately means that requires the defeat of the greater Israeli Zionist project. And I don't see how that's going to happen.
Thank you so much. Jim Kavanagh, political analyst and blogger, joining us to talk about the latest Gaza situation. I'm now joined by Clive Menzies, political economy analyst and researcher, joining us from London. Very good to have you. What do you think about the significance of this Euromed report? What can be really done to improve the situation in Gaza?
The situation will improve is when people stop supporting their governments. I mean, America and various other European and UK countries have all been favoring Israel in this ridiculous situation. You can't call it a conflict. It's a one-sided onslaught that has been continuous. And historically, if you look at all ceasefire agreements and negotiations, they're never honored. They're there. Mossad's motto is make war by deception, and that essentially is what Israel has been doing over the last 70 odd years. So the only way this will stop is when populations around the world turn their backs on their government, refuse to pay their taxes, refuse to participate in this genocide, because it's not down to individuals, it's not down to presidents or prime ministers, it's down to the structure, which is basically driving people to this end. Your other guest said something about how they're going to rebuild it. I mean, this a bit like the California wildfires and various other so-called natural disasters that have been fomented deliberately. It's all part of a real estate grab. That they have visions to rebuild Gaza as a 15-minute city, and they want to ship all the Palestinians off to elsewhere. Well, this is just not tenable in most people's thinking, and it's about time that people actually denied their governments the ability to commit war crimes, because they are all committing war crimes, either through the supply of arms, skewed intelligence, all sorts of involvement that UK, US and European governments have had in this conflict. And Israel is not a special case. There is no justification for the support that it gets. And the only way that support will stop is when people turn their backs on their governments, because they can only do this with our compliance and consent. And if we don't consent, we don't give them money, then the structure will collapse and something better will emerge. So I have no doubt that we are in the midst of a transition, which will mean that we'll be looking in the future at a very different world to the one we live in today, where conflict on this sort of scale is just not possible. But it's going to be a messy transition, and this is one of the unfortunate consequences of this paradigm shift that we're right in the middle of.
Indeed. The report says, Clive, that 85% of the water bowls have been destroyed, and even the equipment to fix those have been banned from entering Gaza. And despite that, especially in the northern part of Gaza, we have like 500,000 people returning to their homes, or whatever is left of those. How can this continue? Because they need infrastructure to sustain.
Well, it's quite deliberate sabotage of every living facility that people need in any to live any sort of decent lifestyle. I mean, this is no secret. This has been going on for as long as I can remember. But hitherto, up until I would say the last few years, as people are awakening to the lies their governments tell them, not just about Israel, but everything, then Israel is actually being seen for what it is, which is a genocidal project, which has no place in a decent human society. And this is not railing against Jews, because Jews are very much victims of this as well, because they're all caught up in this structure, this ideology of destruction, and nobody wins other than those at the very top of the pyramid who are playing their geopolitical games. But at the end of the day, it's our choice, either to comply with our laws, which are nothing to do with justice but are commerce, and withdraw all support and financial assistance or financial obligation to government. And I know that in a practical sense sounds quite difficult, but it can be done in many different ways. I mean, it's undebatable that the UK government and all of the councils are committing war crimes by funding terror, because you can't call this anything other than terror. The terrorism that we're told to fear is not the real problem. It's state terror that is the real problem. That's killing more people than individual acts of madness, even if they are as they are claimed. are minuscule in comparison to the wholesale slaughter, whether you talk about what happened in Iraq, what's happening in the Middle East, in Gaza and the West Bank, in Ukraine. This is a structure that is destroying these people. And it's about time that we realize that by going along to get along with the structure that we have in place is what's fueling this conflict and every other conflict.
Very interesting to get your perspective on the matter. That was Clive Menzies, political economy analyst and researcher, joining us from London.